Educated, unfiltered. We're educated, we're unfiltered. Educated and unfiltered. Thank you for joining me for my first episode of Educated and Unfiltered. I'm Carolyn, and I'm so glad that you're here. The podcast was created to have honest conversations about education, the kind we don't always get to hear, conversations that move past headlines, social media, frustrations, and we just want to get to the heart of what's really going on in our schools. So for the very first episode, I wanted to start with someone that I'm just so fond of. He plays a major role in shaping education in our community. He's a local school board member, and he's going to help us kind of get an understanding about what does it mean to be on a school board. What's your role? And please, his name is Jose Macias. Tell us, why did you decide to be a board member?
Well, thank you, Ms. Ross. It is really, truly an honor to be right here to have this discussion. That's really the conversation. Why are you on a school board? What motivated you to be on a school board? And quite naturally, you have to have the spirit to serve. And a lot of folks out there want to serve. But I'm telling you, this is a journey I never expected it to be like. I'll backtrack. One of the big motivations why I decided it was time to serve was that Judson ISD in 2008, 2009 had just been rated as an unacceptable district by TEA. There were a lot of issues academically. My daughters were going through, they were in elementary school, and I just felt this looks like the right time to help a district. And I decided to look into running. There were objectives I felt that they were not meeting, like not enough emphasis on college readiness, not enough career advancement opportunities. And so I jumped in. I remember one of my biggest issues when I ran was not enough of our students were taking the SAT, which told me there was no real interest in school after high school. So it all started with really trying to shape the academic direction of my community.
So how do you reach out to teachers, or how do teachers reach out to board members? What is y'all's role when it comes to dealing with teachers in the campus and the classroom settings? Are y'all engaged? Are you involved? Or is that the superintendent's responsibility? What is the role of the board member when it comes to educating our kids and supporting our teachers?
Well, that's a good question. The board has a heavy responsibility for providing leadership in moving a district forward. What I found in my tenure as a board member, and for those that may not know my history, I am the fifth term school board member for Judson ISD. I'm the longest serving trustee, beginning my career in 2010. What I've noticed in my time is I've been with 4 different superintendents in 15 years. So what I'm trying to tell you is there is enormous change in district leadership that happens every 4 years, it seems like. Well, if you're changing leadership every 4 years, you have different visions of where a district could go. A board sort of helps keep that vision grounded in the community. But unfortunately, the average tenure of a board member is 8 years. So now you have turnovers of administration, you have turnovers of the board. So there has to be a strong succession plan to ensure that goals and objectives are being met, not only in the short run, but the long run, 10, 20, 30 years from now, to address the need in the community. And then you want to add variables like changing economic conditions, poverty, inflation. I mean, there's all these things that are happening in real time, but the board is entrusted to manage resources and develop a strategy to ensure we're moving forward.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to touch on something really tough. I've been seeing in the news lately, there's so many dysfunctional boards. There's a lot of infighting, and boards are making the news, and it doesn't seem like the focus is not on our children anymore. It's like these board members are bringing all their personal agendas to the forefront. And I thought we were supposed to put teachers first, put students first, bring in the best teachers. But with all of this infighting, the districts are going to start seeing teachers leave because they don't feel like they can trust the board, and they don't feel like there's accountability or any stability for them having any reason to want to stay in a district that's has all of this disgruntledness.
Well, and I can appreciate that perspective and lens, but we've grown up in a society where the media is not covering the excellent work that teachers and staffs are doing. They're more interested in that car accident mentality. What drama is happening? Discourse is expected in the boardroom. I've heard a lot of folks talk about they hate 7-0 board votes. They want to see how decisions are being met. When you have discussion in the boardroom, you have open and honest discourse, transparent discourse about how you're getting somewhere. Some people will see that discourse as dysfunction. That is not true. We're supposed to have those back and forth conversations. Now, where it starts getting gray is when egos get involved. And unfortunately, we're all human. So sometimes egos and all these things start to happen, and it starts to complicate the situation. Then, if you have philosophical differences on a board, for example, that could cause a lot of friction as well. And in some instances, I'm sure boards find common ground. But when you have board members that are unwilling to find common ground and they are determined to push whatever agenda is their agenda, it meets a wall because there's going to be a difference in how we get from point A to point B. And so right now, what you're seeing at Judson is a lot of philosophy. I don't hate anyone on my board, but we have healthy discourse, but we have clear different directions on how to get from point A to point B to point C. In my opinion, some of the discussions would really devastate Judson ISD's ability to provide a quality education for our community. But that's the fight. So then you put in administration in the mix. You asked what the distinction between a board and administration and their roles. Administration, there are experts. We listen to our administration, evaluate their feedback. We hold them accountable, but we look at what administration is bringing to the table, what they feel can move forward. The board then has those discussions.
So let me ask you this. So with all of this of the dysfunction, are you guys ever concerned about the Texas Education Agency stepping in and putting in place a conservator or somebody that's going to make you guys behave yourselves and treat each other accordingly? Because what we're seeing in the public eye is that there's a lot of discord and nobody has seemed like you guys don't seem to trust each other. So where does the shared responsibility come in? When does accountability and you guys hold yourselves accountable for the types of behaviors we're seeing out here in the public?
Well, and that's just an unfortunate byproduct of being passionate about your position. I mean, we're in a political arena, so people can say, "Let's focus on kids, not be political." It's still, whenever you have a voting function, somebody's going to vote yes or no. Where are people voting? That's the politics. So we're always going to be political in nature. I mean, this same sort of dysfunction can be also characterized at the state level in Austin. It could also be found in DC. We know that congressmen are usually poorly rated because of this perception. So we're not immune to that. It's just part of where we are. And it's unfortunate because in my time as a trustee, Judson has never been this far in the dark. Now, there are some accountability measures. If TEA has the criteria, which they do, to take a district over for bad board governance, for mismanagement of funds, it's going to happen. I mean, there's no way a board can stop that from happening. So there are benchmarks. So if my colleagues and I, say theoretically, can't function appropriately where we're impeding the daily operation of the district, they're going to take us over. They did with Edgewood ISD. They've done that with Southside ISD. These districts and board members were accountable, but there are other mechanisms. Poor academic performance would cause TEA to come in. So at this juncture, I'm not worried about what the cause would be. If we simply don't do our job, they're coming. But that's the fight, right? I'm not going to yield to philosophies that I feel are going to hurt our community and our district. And so it's my responsibility to represent the values of my community. I didn't get elected 5 times because I was not representing their values. We're going to fight to ensure that every student in my district has the resources they need.
So let's talk about students and discipline and mental health and safety issues. These are huge concerns for parents. So, how does the board think about student behavior and accountability? And how do you guys balance consequence with support? And what role does the board um, play in setting expectations for school culture?
Well, that's also part of how we're supporting administration. Recently, there was a bill that passed in legislature that banned cell phone usage. Cell phone usage actually was quite an issue. And in fact, I had an opportunity to have that discussion the last 2 years as we prepared for this transition. Our support is to ensure that there are enough resources to address that need. And so far this year, cell phones have not been an enormous problem. It's been actually better. It's not completely erased, but it is certainly much lower than it was. So, in terms of dealing with social emotional issues, as a board member, I've probably put counseling services on the agenda more than any other board member because I want to make sure the eye is on addressing that need. I've had several students and families impacted by suicide, by gang violence, things that, they're not going to be remedied just because we talk about them. They need to have support on campuses and through the district. And that's where a board member can say, we need resources, we need partnerships, we need a focus. And ultimately, we hold our administration accountable to ensure that they're reaching those objectives.
Well, I used to be a former principal, and we on our campus we
Miss
had
Ross,
social
Miss Ross,
workers. Yes,
you were a awesome former principal. Go ahead.
I appreciate that. I was a former principal, but we used to have social workers that would help support us with these issues with our kids. Kids suffering from poverty, kids suffering from mental health issues. We also initiated different programs to address, um, children with social emotional learning disabilities. Why has the district strayed so far away from bringing these programs back to the campuses and supporting all of these varying problems that the schools are facing today?
I
Is it
suspect
money?
a lot
What
of
is
it
it?
I suspect that a lot of the shift has been because of academics. TEA is very critical now with how campuses are performing. Who can blame them, right? We need to have campuses that are performing. But it's gotten to a point where the STAR test is the focus. We're trying to teach to the STAR and pass so that when a community looks at a campus, it's not a D or F campus, it's a C, a B, an A campus, because that gives everyone in the community the sense that the school is addressing social emotional issues because students are successful. All of it comes down to the mandates that TEA has put out there. And if you decide you want to focus on having 20 social workers rather than 20 tutors, and you do not make the grade, after so many times, you'll either lose your job as a principal if you're not at where you need to be, or TEA will come and take over the whole district because of one failing campus. So my short answer to that is the focus on testing has caused a shift in the way that it used to be.
Let me interrupt you here. You guys just don't have one failing school in the district. You have quite a few failing schools, just not your school district. We have failing schools across the city of Antonio. We have failing schools across the state of Texas. We have failing schools across the nation. How are we addressing these issues with failing schools and poor academic performance and our kids, the poor literacy rate and our math and science and reading scores are some of the lowest in the country?
Well, and I will throw this back to that argument. We're putting leadership in place that should be there. You, being a former principal, knows it starts at the principal level at a campus. If you do not have strong leadership at the principal level, there's going to be trouble on that campus. So we had to see some shifts this past year with some of those campuses that did not perform as well. And so there was a change in leadership. But then we're also at a time where TEA has raised the bar. Just 3 years ago in 2022, the bar to be qualified as a B district was much lower. Each year, TEA has raised that bar as we've come out of the pandemic. So to make a B now, I mean, you have a much higher bar. A B is now really a low C in most cases because of the dynamics. So it's harder. And then you add the fact that we've been underfunded by the legislature. Our basic allotment for students has not grown since 2019. I take it back. It went up $55 since 2019. And that doesn't even keep up with inflationary factors. But yet we're supposed to manage a district and support teachers and work to retain them with 55 extra dollars over 6 years. If funding is not a priority in Austin, we don't have the resources to maximize our initiatives to address the need. And I've been saying that every day to whoever will listen. That's where part of the problem lies.
Well, not to stroke your ego, but I've always enjoyed talking to you about educational issues. You and I have this unique relationship because you know my passion about education. I understand your passion, but I've always respected the fact that you've done the homework, you've done the research, you go to the board trainings, and you put yourself out there in front of the media to let them know that you're in this business for all the right reasons. And that's to ensure that our children are receiving the best academic instruction possible. But I know there's a lot of distractions out there when you're dealing with other board members and the bickering and stuff, but I don't want to keep going back over that bridge. That train has left the station. What can we do now to move forward to ensure that our teachers aren't leaving the field of education? We're going to retain these teachers. We're going to give them the resources that they need, and they can feel like they can trust you guys again.
Well, this is the deal, and I have to get back to that too because I can speak about my district. Obviously, I can't speak about SAISD or Northside to the same degree that I can speak about Judson. I mean, central to the philosophical fight now is that you have some on the board that want to eliminate 500 positions by June 30th of 26. And I contend we don't need to eliminate 500 positions. We just can simply leave positions unfilled so that we're not hanging a pink slip over anybody. We're saying you leave if you want to, but it just means you're going to have to do a little more work because once the position is vacant, somebody has to pick up that slack. So it's going to get harder, but employment will still be there. I find when I talk to teachers and other professionals, they want to know if they're going to have a job next year. That's point number 1. Number 2 is how are we going to support them? I let them know that through the next 2 years, as we try to balance our budget, we're going to go through some tough roads with attrition and having a little bit more of a workload. But we will come out of it. But in 2 years, we'll get there. So we can rebuild trust and all that. But on the board, should I yield that argument and allow the other side to say, sure, cut 500 people? Hell no. So 500 employees would decimate the district in 1 year by June 30th. Let's work on attrition over the next 2 years. We can get to where we need to be and have a balanced budget. But those are the things that we're fighting about. You're not hearing about it now because there's distractions about the superintendent. There's distraction about board member investigations. All this stuff is noise. At the end of the day, the other stuff is still happening. We still have to make a decision on school closures. We still have to make a decision on if we're going to cut, what we're going to cut. So it's tough. All of it, I'm going to say this again, all of it starts with Austin underfunding education. If they would have basically just given us an additional $1,500 per student over the last 6 years, we would not have this deficit. If you do the numbers, you add $1,500 for every student we have, it would almost wipe out our current deficit. But we don't have that luxury. Those funds are going to private school vouchers. And yet there is no accountability for a student going to private school to take the STAR test. Completely backwards. And that
So
is
that's prob
central.
so that's probably why these parents are pulling the kids out of school because of the stress of dealing with the STAR test. I wanna have you back on the show because I'm not gonna let you off the hook because I really want us to address all of the infighting about, replacing superintendents, replacing principals, people's livelihoods are turned upside down. But I also want to address AI in education, and I want to talk about the impact of school vouchers on public schools and how's that changing the whole landscape of what public
It's
education is
real.
looking like today. Yeah. So I'm just so excited to have you as my first guest, but you're not going to be the first guest. I'm going to invite you back to be a co-host because we have so many great topics to cover. But the main thing is that I want you to keep being the person that you are, keep pushing and keeping that train on the track to let the teachers know that you're here to support them. Because right now we have there's a lot out here in the air that's circulating that they just don't feel supported, so they're ready to go.
It's a sad time. I mean, I wish I could feel more optimistic. I mean, I do in my heart. I do believe we have great employees at Just Nicety who care about our children, but it's hard. And we need to get it together and we need to go ahead and move forward. And over the next couple of months, hopefully, we're in a different place.
Again, let me thank you for being on the show tonight. Thank you for joining me on Educated and Unfiltered. You will be back as a guest. I'm hoping that this first recording is a
Sure.
winner. Want people to please subscribe to my show. We're going to have some really neat guests coming up in the future, but remember, stay unfiltered.
Educated, unfiltered, we're educated.